And it is the Saturday Coffee Klatch with Heather Lofthouse and yours truly, Robert Reich. Heather, we are reaching the third week of the Trump regime. I'm going to continue to call it the regime instead of the administration.
That's
I mean, how,
205 weeks to go.
I can't, no, it can't be 205 weeks to go.
Brew
Please
your
don't.
coffee.
I mean, each week under Trump is like a month in real time. I mean,
It's like dog years.
it's really it's taking a lot out of everybody, and I mean that. I mean, I think last night I had another set of dreams about Trump. I can't. Well, anyway, what are we what what are we going to talk about
Let's
today?
get into it. I mean, I think we got to talk about all of the insane things from the past week.
Wait a minute.
Whoa.
There's so many insane things. How do we select the insane
Nope.
the most insane?
Can't make a list. Can't make a list anymore. Okay, so let's review. Do you remember at the start of the week we were talking about trade wars?
It seems like 100 years ago. I mean, the start of this week, there was a Mexico and Canada both basically agreed to do what they have already been doing, and Trump claimed victory,
Yes.
and then put them on a kind of a 30-day leash. And there's going to be supposed to be negotiations, and it's all about Trump claiming victory, looking like he's tough. And then I think he also made some other remark about Canada and the 51st state. And meanwhile, he's still fulminating about the Panama Canal and about Greenland. But the big story, of course, was he wants to make a resort out of Gaza, a kind of Riviera. I mean, it is hard to know whether this person named Donald Trump is serious or whether it's a big joke. I mean, how do you, if I were a journalist trying to report, I wouldn't know how to begin. I mean, it's not even foreign policy. I mean, it's all deflection. What happened to Ukraine? Remember, he was going to solve the war in one day. I mean, what happened to? Is the ceasefire still operating? Is he doing anything about the ceasefire in Gaza? I mean, this is all wild deflection, and the press is falling for it.
And that's the plan, right? It's what Steve Bannon talked about. It's what they aim to overwhelm us so we don't see what's actually happening, right? I mean, we can't forget I have a concept of a plan. I mean, there are no plans here. This is all impulse and mayhem.
It's not even impulse control. It's just mayhem. I mean, this is flooding. Bannon's phrase I remember is flooding the zone. But there's an entertainment quality to this too. I mean, people come up to me, did you hear? I mean, what he's going to do with Gaza? And they laugh, but they also are horrified at the same time. It's this combination of laughter and horror that I see and hear all around me.
I think that's a survival tactic, by the way.
I think it is too.
Because it's so atrocious.
But it is an entertainment in a way. But it deflects attention from all of the most important things, whether we're talking about foreign policy or we're talking about a coup. I mean, what's happening this week is the kind of the final infrastructure of what is essentially a coup, taking power away from the rest of government and putting it in the hands of Donald Trump.
Aided and abetted by none other than Elon Musk and what you're calling the muskrats.
And the muskrats are people who they have not been in any way vetted by anybody in the FBI or anybody else. I mean, they have access and they've wormed their way. I think, what is it rats do? They burrow, they tunnel into the data of the United States, and we know that they are now right there in control of the payment systems in the Treasury, and the new Treasury Secretary allowed them to, but even before he allowed them to, they were already into that payment system. They're burrowing into the General Services Administration. They're burrowing into all of these data sets and payment systems all around government. One of the muskrats, I'm going to call them muskrats. Is that rude?
Probably, but that's okay. I support it. Just to be clear, there are about 6 or 7 of these very young, between the ages of 19 and 25, men, who are going in with computer science skills, right? Go ahead.
They have no other skills as far as I can say. They can code. They know how to code. One of them was just essentially had to resign because they found that he had quite racist, ugly stuff that he had been promoting or talking about a few years ago on Twitter. And another one is 19 years old, and he has a business on the side in which he is actually he's promoting some methods to set up your own websites and to do other things. In Russia, he's working with, this is wild, Heather. It is really bizarre. Again, these people have not been authorized by Congress. They've not been vetted. There is no process or oversight of what they are doing. Nobody knows what they are doing. This is supposed to be, let me remind everybody, a government by and for and of the people. The people. We are supposed to know what is happening in Washington, and people who are now from Musk's circle in Silicon Valley, young 19, 20, 21-year-olds, coders, are getting control of the codes of payments made by the United States. And Musk is now saying, well, I could stop these payments, and maybe I will.
I know. And this is the thing. We need this data and these people this needs to be secure. They haven't passed security clearance tests.
This is the most
number one.
That's right. These are among the most sensitive places and data you can be in the federal government, and there is no security. No security. There's personal information. There's your social security number, Heather, and your unemployment insurance, and your data about where you were born. I didn't even know where you were born.
Well, now you do. And now,
Elon's people know.
I'm thinking back to my ballot. November. I don't remember seeing Elon Musk on there.
Was he? He's the new magazine cover of Time magazine has Elon Musk sitting there behind the desk in the White House in the Oval Office. We have somebody who he could not even be elected. He's not even born in the United States.
I know.
So if you're talking about a takeover, a coup, number one, you burrow in with your muskrats through these little trapdoors and back rooms and tunnels.
Rats always leave their little hairs and their oil behind them. My exterminator showed me this. Yeah, no, you can tell where they've been. You can tell
that's
where
great.
they've been.
Thank you.
Remember that.
That makes me feel better about them. And then you've got, besides these muskrats who are burrowing and tunneling and getting control of everything, you've got from the top down, you've got this process of taking over agencies like USAID. Last week. Closing the agency, firing essentially almost all of the 10,000 workers in the agency. These are people who have been working, and they're contractors. It's not just the agency 10,000. They have about 60 to 70,000 contractors around the world who are working on health issues, on helping stop communicable diseases, on providing schools.
Agriculture. Education, energy. These are essential needs. I know. And keep in mind, too, so we're doing this for the sake of efficiency gains. Let's remember, USAID's budget, $38 billion. What Musk has made in terms of his personal net worth since the election, it has grown $156 billion.
So we ought to
think about those numbers.
We ought to tax Musk and to pay for the USAID that he's just destroyed. And all of the people, the millions of people around the world who are dependent. The richest person in the world has just destroyed America's agency for helping the poorest people in the world, and he has made $170 billion in the process. And he's doing it so that there is more room in the federal budget for what? For a big tax cut for people like him.
And this whole thing about DEI, I mean, the minority person we need to be worried about is a billionaire taking over. I mean, talk about a minority.
Everything is upside down. I mean, it's truly upside down. I thought it was weird and bizarre and upside down in the first Trump administration, but at least there you had some people who were guardrails. I mean, who told him no. Now there is no restraint at all. There's no boundary, and all the people who are being joining his administration, not just the Musks and the muskrats, but even people who are getting through Congress, like Vogt. I mean, Office of Management Budget. He was Office of Management Budget in the first term, but he was the brains behind Project 2025 that Trump kept on saying during the campaign he never heard of, he had nothing to do with, but he is implementing everything that was in Project 2025. And now Vogt is there at OMB and at the Office of Management Budget. He's going to be able to do even more of this. We do have some positives from the week. Can I just announce that? I just want to say that the next step with regard to Vogt is something called impoundment.
Yes, and we talked about this a little last week, but let's talk about it again. Okay, tell us the history, and I know there was an act when Nixon was president. Remind us.
Well, I mean, very, very quickly, Richard Nixon did not want to spend money that Congress had appropriated. The appropriation process is quite big. It's a big deal. It's one of the most important aspects of what Congress does under Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution of the United States. Congress has the power of the purse. Nixon did not want to spend on the things that Congress wanted, and he therefore impounded the money. Congress the next year, in 1974, passed what's called the Impoundment Control Act, which said, no, a president cannot simply decide what he's going to spend money on. No, this is Congress's prerogative. And then the Supreme Court in 1975, the next year, there was a test case, and the Supreme Court unanimously said, yes, the Impoundment Control Act is constitutional, and a president cannot make up his decision, his mind about what is going to be spent and how it's going to be spent. But what's happening now, this is, Vogt at OMB and
Let's
Trump.
Be clear. That's a person, Voughg.
It is
Keep
pronounced
going.
Vogt.
It's confusing. It is. Yes. I know, but it's confusing.
I mean, it's kind of a Dickensian notion.
Yep.
I mean, somebody who is really part of the coup of the United States named Vogt. I mean, there's certain irony there. But he and Trump are going to take this, I believe, as a test case to the Supreme Court once again and see if the court will reverse itself in terms of its 1974 decision. A big deal. I mean, because if the court reverses itself and says, okay, we were wrong, Trump, you want to spend money as you want to spend it, that's fine. Congress is out of the picture. I mean, it's easy from that point on for Trump or any president, assuming that there is a future president, to say to Congress, well, if you want to spend X, I have to approve that, and maybe I'll approve it if you give me Y, or you let me do this, which maybe is illegal right now, but I want it to be legal, so you make it legal, and we're square.
So this is a power grab, on steroids. But I have a hard time remedying because this is not going to go well. This is not going to go well. This is not a strategic, smart, thinking, contemplative leader, right? We've discussed that.
Well, I think you understated the situation. But let me just remind you, Heather, we're not even to the end of week 3. And we are now seeing this coup And when I say coup, I mean it is a coup because it is illegal. It is illegal in terms of the laws of Congress, the Privacy Act, impoundment. It's illegal in terms of the Constitution. I mean, so much of what's happening now is just flouting the law entirely.
I know. But so what does legal even mean anymore? I have some friends former colleagues who work for USAID abroad, and their emails were turned off and they were fired, and they were staying in an apartment that was, part of the job and funded. And then they got a note that said security is coming on Monday. And so then they thought, well, do we fight? Do we fight this? I mean, this doesn't seem legal, but I guess we don't have, what does legal mean these days? So we're just going to have to leave. We're not going to risk that security is going to come take the kids and kick us out.
I mean, you're asking exactly the right question, because before we had this kind of takeover, this coup, what was legal was pretty clear. That is, Congress would enact a law, the president would either sign it or veto it, and then Congress would have an opportunity to override the veto. And then, if necessary, there could be appeals to the federal court system to test the legality in terms of whether process was correct or whether it was consistent with the Constitution. That was a system. It's called a system of government, a system of self-government, a democracy. What do we have now? We have a person in the Oval Office with a sidekick named Elon Musk, or maybe it's Elon Musk with a sidekick named Donald Trump, that are
who's
basically
in the sidecar and who's driving.
And I don't know, but law is what they are saying it is. They are basically saying, we don't care about the law. By the way, did you hear or see Senator Tom Tillis, one of the lackeys, one of Trump's lackeys, said, it may be unconstitutional, but don't make a big deal about it. Don't bellyache. I think he used the term bellyache. Don't bellyache. Maybe unconstitutional, don't bellyache.
But so I feel better when I see, I feel better when I see these federal judges blocking things or banning things. I mean, I'm seeing these words and I'm feeling better, but if we're not following that, right, then, I mean, if the federal judge says, okay, the buyouts, this is not kosher, not okay, but they're still happening.
That's a federal term, not kosher. I mean, it's a particular.
Yeah.
Yes, federal judges are stepping in now, and there are a lot of appeals. My count is about 45 separate appeals to the federal court system from what Trump has done in the first 3 weeks already, and many judges are putting stays or injunctions, that is actually stopping it, saying until we have a full trial, until we know more about this, nothing can go forward. But there are indications that Trump and Musk are doing it anyway. I mean, the freeze on all federal spending was found to be unconstitutional, or at least a stay was put on it. The federal court said, no, you can't do that. But the freeze continues.
And in the meantime, they're moving people in. And I feel like you saw that Elon was tweeting about how weekends are where it's at, because it's like the opposing team isn't even on the field. You have 2 days to do whatever you want. Democracy dies in darkness, or democracy dies on the weekend.
And who is Musk's opposing team? Is it the people of the United States? Is it Democrats? Is it who is the opposing team? I thought the people of America were actually behind supporting. Supposedly, it was a government of the people, by the people, for the people, but it's not. But Musk sees it as we are the opponents somehow.
Yeah. But there were some federal court wins, right? So there wasn't just that. There was one on Doge, right? And
Yes.
They can't have access to the Treasury Department systems. And
But
then,
wait a minute. But even on the issue of the buyouts, I mean, right until the I think Thursday night was the time where people, federal employees, could accept or not accept the buyout that was being offered by so-called being offered by Trump, actually being offered by Musk. Musk was tweeting, was saying, you have to accept this. This is a great deal.
Yep.
Even after the court said, no, you can't do that. He continued to do it. He doesn't. There is nothing in his history or in Trump's history that suggests that they are bound or feel bound by the law. Now, the federal courts are going to be doing even more, and it's going to go up to the courts of appeals. And that's going to happen over the next couple of weeks. And some of this is going to go to the Supreme Court.
But
And
you
then
know who is acting bound by the law? The Democrats. It feels
Yes.
like they are just doing business as usual. Now, I did see some proof of life this week that I was pleased to see. We saw people protesting. We saw people showing up at rallies. And I do think that this upswell, this bottom-up energy that we're seeing from people. I mean, there were more calls than they've ever seen. They have 1,000 voicemail limit, and all of these inboxes have been full from Democrats. That's what they were saying. So,
Well, even some Republicans. I mean, a lot of Republicans, believe it or not, are very upset by what is going on. Not just the Never Trumpers, but other Republicans. I mean, everybody's calling in, and I think making a fuss. And some are demonstrating, and Democrats appear to be getting a little bit of life in them, and that's fabulous. I mean, they were up all night trying to stop the vote on vote. The vote
That's
on
it,
vote.
yeah.
Yeah.
They were doing speeches all night to delay it, which wasn't actually a talking filibuster, I understand. It was just staying up all night with a barrage of speeches. But I mean...
But Heather, even if this doesn't really do much legally or to change the direction of the coup, at least it shows Americans that there is life, there is an opposition, there is resistance. We're not just all playing dead. We, the people, are having some voice. And so I think it's important that Democrats continue even louder, even in a bigger way. I mean, stop everything. Stop it. I mean, don't let the Republicans get anything done.
And it'll be very telling I actually took a leadership and social change class with you in fall of 2006, I think it was. And
Yes,
and
you were very good. You were very, very good. I'm not going to give your grade away but Elon Musk has your grade, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. He
Yes.
knows what I got on the midterm. That's depressing. But it's interesting who is rising up. I mean, AOC did an Instagram live and 5 million people viewed it, encouraging leaders encourage this bottom-up energy, and then specific leaders channel it, right, and use it for good. It'll be interesting to see in the next 2 years and the next 4 years who is coming up. Who are the...
If
Bob,
we make
you
it,
can't say that.
Wait a minute. Wait, here's what I want to say. Because when ultimately the Supreme Court if it has the backbone to say no to Trump on one of these basic issues, and what happens then? Well, J.D. Vance, I don't know if you remember, a year and a half, 2 years ago.
J.D. Vance?
J.D. Vance said, quote, he said, yes, let the Supreme Court, and he was quoting Andrew Jackson, when Andrew Jackson said this about the Marshall Supreme Court. He said, let them make their decision, and we will just not follow it. We will ignore it.
Yeah.
Well, when that happens, that's the final end game. That is the end game. We can protest all we want, but unless there is an upsurge, a revolutionary upsurge, it doesn't matter.
There would have to be. I mean, we can't go down these. I mean, I don't have enough coffee in this mug to be going
I don't
here.
want to.
This was not the plan in my head.
But it wasn't. I mean, it's
for
so
the
much
world,
worse.
For America.
It is so much worse than I thought it would be. But you know what, Heather? I'm so impressed by a lot of the public servants, the civil servants, who have stood up this past week and said, no, we work for the people. You know, we're in an independent agency, or we're not going to give you the keys to the kingdom. We are going to. We're not going to give in. And I think
we've seen it at a lot of levels this week. So, I mean, the General Services Administration staffers, they're doing interesting things on their internal communication systems like Slack and otherwise, because Elon wrote that email, which was taken from his Twitter email that says fork in the road. please everyone leave. And they're all putting spoon emojis everywhere, right? So there is an energy, and they're setting up private communication channels to be talking about things. And a lot of federal workers are going on Reddit and on subreddits and saying, let's stand up. And you saw the numbers in terms of the number of people who have taken the buyout is reported at 40,000, which is about 2% of the workforce. And we know that Trump was hoping it would be 5 to 10% who would leave. So, I mean, there have been, and then you saw, of course, that the largest union of federal workers has had more signups in 4,000 came in the past week or so, and they're at the highest rate of paying members that they've ever been in 92 years. So there's stuff happening, and then so that's kind of at this level, and then at other level, people are coming in and they're saying, we're not going to do the things that you want us to do. Agent Driscoll, who was running the FBI, he said, no, we are not. I'm not going to give you the information of the people who were doing stuff around the January 6th riot. I'm not going to reveal this to you. So certain people are standing up and saying, I'm not going to go, period, or I'm not going to go without a fight.
Or I'm going, that's right, or I'm fighting. I mean, the chair of the National Labor Relations Board, who was illegally fired by Trump, she is appealing that.
And the FEC.
The member of the Federal Elections Commission, who was just fired illegally by Trump. Again, there's going to be a fight there. I think fighting is absolutely critical at this stage. And something else, Heather, I have a lot of people have been brutal toward the federal workforce. But they call it, for years. I mean, starting with the Reagan administration, calling them bureaucrats, and just this baloney about the deep state, the so-called deep state. These are people who dedicate their lives so that we are safe, so that our jobs are safe, so that the environment is better than it otherwise would be, so that corporations don't ride roughshod over us. These are people who, in my experience, and I worked with many of them, care deeply about the United States. They would not be doing what they are doing, would they, if they didn't care deeply about the United States. They could get better jobs. They could get safer. I mean, more stable
and higher
jobs.
Paying. I know.
And higher paying, and they wouldn't have to ever, worry constantly about shutdowns and about, failures to raise the debt limit and all this. I mean, they go through shite constantly. We owe them a huge debt of gratitude.
It's a vocation. It is a vocation, and the civil service was set up to be nonpartisan.
Yes, in fact, there's something called the Pendleton Act. This is one of the great reforms. Get rid of the spoils system. Don't allow a president to just put in his loyalists. This is a professional civil service. That's what Congress enacted. That's another act that he's basically thumbing his nose at.
Right. And I go digging into the archives and force you and everyone else to watch. But sometimes they're funny and sometimes they're prescient and scary and ominous and interesting. And this one is incredibly poignant. It is from you. It is a video of you saying goodbye as you were leaving the Department of Labor and saying how much you appreciated federal workers and how much they need to be appreciated and are underappreciated.
Public servants have taken a lot of bum raps over recent years. There is some frustration out in the land, obviously, and government is an easy target. And I remember when several of us gathered together after the disaster in Oklahoma City. I remember calling some Department of Labor employees who were injured. I remember calling one Department of Labor family who had lost a member in that Oklahoma bombing. And I remember the shutdowns, and I remember all the things that you have been through and all of the work that you are doing. And I think that the public is beginning, and I hope it is beginning, to understand that its public servants are working for the public, that you are engaged in one of the most noble callings there is, and that is every day, trying to make people's lives better in an environment that is often not very much of an appreciative environment. I have often said that a large institution like this with 16,000 people is subjected to chronic underappreciation. Every one of you here, every one of you in the regional offices, everybody, you're working hard, and there's no way that you can fully be appreciated. There's no way that I or anybody can fully show appreciation for what you are doing. You are chronically underappreciated. And yet you are doing such important work, and I do appreciate it, and the public does appreciate what you are doing. I am not going right away. We will have many opportunities to talk, but I want to tell you that I am honored to have been a part of the Department of Labor and to have all of you as colleagues over the past 4 years. Thank you.
Heather, that really does make me want to cry. I mean, I mean it. It's just 30 years, almost 30 years ago, how far we have come. How well, I feel for those people. I mean, they are being treated in ways that they should not be treated. And this also goes for all of those USAID workers and the people, the contractors. I mean, it's shameful. It is utterly shameful. Anyway.
Thank you, though, for letting us share that and for fighting for them and as one of them for all that you've done. And people are going to continue to fight, and you're an example of that. So thanks for letting me torture you with archival clips.
Well, thank you for torturing me, and keep on. Heather, thank you, and thank you for doing this every week and for all your other work with Inequality Media, and you are on the front line as well. And let me just say one final word to all of you out there. End of week 3 of this regime, which is turning into a dictatorship. What I tell myself when I get discouraged, and I do get discouraged, I mean, this has been the longest 3 weeks that I can remember, is maybe we needed something like this to wake us up. Maybe we needed this reminder of how important democracy is. Maybe we needed to be reminded of the work that the government does that is so important to all of us. Maybe this shock over the long term will be just exactly necessary in terms of the long game, in terms of the reforms that must be done, must be made. You know, Heather, I've watched for 40 years as big money has taken over our politics, as the oligarchy has become more and more powerful, as average working people have felt ignored. Donald Trump is the consequence, not the cause of what we're now experiencing. And so with luck, these institutions that have been built over 100 and, in some cases, 200 and more years, these institutions will succeed and pass one of the worst stress tests they have endured. Thank you all. See you next week.